I allowed my wife to cheat. Legally point one signature, and her next kiss became my ticket to take everything. Sounds insane, right? But the truth is, I didn't scream, I didn't throw anything, and I didn't beg for explanations. I just smiled, because I knew that once she crossed the line again, the game would be mine. And the best part? She had no idea that I'd already seen the messages. Before we go deeper, make sure you're subscribed. I've got stories that'll make you question what you'd do if you were in my place. Trust me, you don't want to miss the next ones. So, let me take you back a few months before that signature changed everything. I'd been married for 7 years. To everyone around us, we were the picture of stability. Good jobs, nice house, 2 cars, weekend brunches, the perfect couple. But behind the walls, things were slipping. Late-night phone calls, sudden work meetings, her screen flipping every time I walked by. You don't need to be a genius to know when your partner's attention has shifted. At first, I tried to believe her excuses. It's just a colleague. You're being paranoid. You're working too much. Classic lines. And I wanted to believe them because, honestly, it's easier to live in denial than face betrayal head-on. But the gut doesn't lie. Point one night, she came home past midnight, smelling like a different brand of cologne, one I didn't wear. I asked, calm as a monk, rough day at the office? She hesitated, blinked, and that was all I needed. My silence scared her more than any shouting ever could. She muttered something about traffic, when to take a shower, and I just sat there, staring at the contract papers on my laptop screen. Not divorce papers, something much smarter. You see, I'm not the kind of guy who fights emotional wars. I fight legal ones. I started researching how to create a post-nuptial agreement that would be legally binding in case of infidelity. Sounds crazy? Maybe. But you'd be surprised how many loopholes there are if you know how to write them right. The next few days, I played the role of the forgiving husband. I brought her coffee, kissed her on the cheek, acted like I was trying to rebuild trust. Meanwhile, every evening I spent 2 hours on calls with my lawyer. We crafted a document that looked innocent enough, a marital rebuilding agreement. But inside that paper, I hid a clause so sharp it could cut steel. If she ever cheated again, she'd lose claim to every shared asset, house, savings, everything. And I made it sound noble. I told her, this isn't about control, it's about rebuilding trust. If either of us breaks it again, we walk away clean. No fighting, no drama. She laughed. You're being ridiculous, she said. But she still signed it. With a little shrug, she wrote her name at the bottom, thinking it was just another symbolic gesture to patch things up. That night, I lay next to her, watching her sleep, feeling nothing. No anger, no love, just this quiet, cold satisfaction that the scales were finally even. I didn't have to catch her again, I just had to wait. Because when people cheat once, they almost always cheat again, and deep down, I knew she would. So I waited. Smiling, calm, planning, because revenge isn't loud. It's silent, patient, and perfectly legal. She probably thought I'd moved on. The way I smiled over dinner, the calm tone in my voice, it must have convinced her that everything was fine again. But inside, I was taking mental notes. Every new excuse, every late-night message she tried to hide, every detail that would one day become a weapon. 2 weeks after she signed the contract, I decided it was time to talk. Not to fight, to negotiate. She came home one evening wearing a dress I hadn't seen before. Expensive. Something she wouldn't normally buy without asking me. She said it was a gift from a coworker. I nodded, pretending not to care, but that single word, gift, echoed in my head like a siren. That we had dinner in silence. Then I looked up and said, I know. Her fork froze midair. Know what? She asked, trying to sound calm, but I could see her pulse jump in her neck. I know you weren't at the office last Friday. She stared at me, wide-eyed, lips slightly parted. I kept my voice steady. I'm not here to yell or accuse you. I'm here to offer you a choice. That line got her attention. She crossed her arms, defensive but curious. A choice for what? I leaned back, keeping my tone cold but almost gentle. You can walk away now, peacefully. I'll make sure you're taken care of. No mess, no drama. Or you can stay, and we rebuild everything from scratch. But this time, under one condition, complete honesty, backed by a written agreement. She frowned, confused. A written agreement? You're kidding. I'm not, I said. If we're rebuilding trust, it should have structure. You want freedom? Fine. I want security. If either of us betrays the other again, we lose everything we've built. Simple. Fair. She scoffed. You're being dramatic. Maybe, I said quietly, but at least I'm being honest. I watched her face soften, her guilt showing for just a second before she hit it again. You really think I'd sign something like that? I gave a small smile. You already did. Her jaw dropped. What? The paper you signed 2 weeks ago. That wasn't a therapy agreement. It was a legal contract. She went pale. You tricked me. I shook my head. No, you agreed to it. You just didn't read it. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, in that soft, trembling voice people use when they realize the floor beneath them is cracking, she asked, and if I break it? I met her eyes. Then everything we own becomes mine. Legally. Irrevocably. She laughed, but it wasn't joy. It was fear disguised as sarcasm. You wouldn't actually do that. I don't have to, I said. I just have to wait. That silence between us stretched like a wire ready to snap. She stood, muttering that I was being insane, and went to the bedroom. The door closed hard. Not slammed, but just enough to make her point that I sat there, staring at my untouched plate, feeling strangely calm. It wasn't about revenge anymore. Not yet. It was about control. For the first time in months, I wasn't the one being lied to. I was the one with the plan. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Coffee on the counter, a kiss on the cheek, pretending to be the loving wife again, and I played along. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that you don't catch a liar by cornering them. You catch them by giving them enough space to expose themselves. So I smiled, thanked her for breakfast, and watched her drive away. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She'd left it unlocked for a second. One message on the screen. Last night was perfect. Same time tomorrow. My hand didn't shake when I read it. I just took a deep breath, locked the phone, and whispered, perfect. Because the clock had just started ticking. I didn't rush. That's the mistake most people make when they find out they've been betrayed. They move too fast, driven by anger. But anger burns out. Strategy doesn't. That morning, after reading that message, I didn't confront her. I didn't even mention it. Instead, I brewed myself a cup of coffee, sat at my desk, and started organizing everything. Receipts, bank statements, call logs. You'd be amazed how many traces people leave behind when they think they're being clever. Later that day, I called my lawyer, Rick, a calm, gray-haired man who'd seen more divorces than love stories. You ready to make it official? He asked. Not yet, I said. I just need you to make sure every clause in that agreement is bulletproof. He chuckled. You're setting up a trap. I'm just protecting my assets, I said, and my peace of mind. Rick reviewed the contract and told me something that made me smile. If she violates it, the court won't even ask why. It's airtight. She signed willingly, and it's notarized. You'd get everything. That sentence stuck in my head all day. You'd get everything. When she came home that night, she was radiant. Hair done, lipstick fresh, perfume that wasn't cheap. I asked, good day at work? She said, busy, and kissed me on the cheek. I could smell the lie, but I played along. After dinner, I offered to pour her a glass of wine. While she was in the shower, I quietly opened her purse. Inside, a hotel keycard. The name printed on it was one I didn't recognize, but I memorized it instantly. When she came out, I was smiling, calm as ever. She asked, what are you smiling about? Just thinking how lucky we are, I said. She laughed, thinking I was being sweet. I almost pitied her. Almost. The next morning, she left early for a meeting. 10 minutes later, I followed. The hotel was across town, discreet enough for her to think she wouldn't be seen. I parked across the street, watching from my car. And there she was, walking inside with that same man whose name was on the keycard. No confrontation. No shouting. Just quiet observation. I took photos. Timestamps. Enough proof to satisfy any court. Then I drove away, feeling something unexpected. Not pain, not fury. Relief. Because now it wasn't just suspicion. It was fact. That afternoon, I met Rick again. We sat in his office, surrounded by oak shelves and thick legal books. I slid my phone across the desk, showing him the photos. He nodded slowly. This is all you need. You could file for breach of contract tomorrow. I leaned back in my chair, thinking. Not yet, I said. I want to make sure she digs herself in deeper first. He raised an eyebrow. You're playing a long game. Exactly. I don't just want to win, I said quietly. I want her to understand why she lost. That night, she came home pretending to be exhausted, talking about clients and deadlines. I listened, nodding, even made her dinner. She had no clue that I'd already handed copies of our contract and the evidence to Rick, safely stored in his firm's archive. When she kissed me goodnight, I didn't flinch. I looked her in the eyes and said softly, "I'm proud of you." She smiled, confused but pleased. "Really?" "Yeah," I said. "You're teaching me a lot about honesty." She laughed, thinking it was a joke. I turned off the light and stared at the ceiling, counting the days until she'd fall right into her own trap. Because by then, the legal chessboard was set, and every move she made was mine to predict. The strange thing about pretending is how natural it starts to feel. For the next few weeks, we lived what looked like a perfect marriage. Laughter over breakfast, movie nights, dinners with friends. The kind of peace that feels too still, too rehearsed. She thought the storm had passed. I knew it hadn't even started. Every morning, she'd kiss me goodbye and leave for work. I'd wait 15 minutes, then check the tracker I'd placed in her car. It wasn't something out of a spy movie, just a small GPS tag hidden in a tissue box. Completely legal since the car was registered under my name. What it showed me each time confirmed what I already knew. She wasn't driving to the office.it first, I just watched the pattern. Same hotel, same hours, same lies about overtime. I didn't act. I simply observed. Because in this kind of game, patience isn't weakness, it's precision. One Friday night, she came home glowing, hair perfect, that same sweet perfume clinging to her skin. She hugged me from behind while I cooked. "I missed you," she whispered, damn my hands didn't even tremble as I stirred the sauce. "I missed you too." I lied smoothly. We had dinner like nothing was wrong. She talked about work projects, and I asked all the right questions, the kind that made her feel safe. She smiled, relaxed. I let her talk. That's what liars do when they think they're safe. They talk too much. Later, she fell asleep on the couch, half a glass of wine still in her hand. I sat there, watching her, thinking about how love and hate can look almost identical when you strip away emotion. I didn't feel hatred, just a strange calm, like watching the final act of a play when you already know how it ends. The next day, I decided to turn that calm into action. I started gathering financial records, joint accounts, credit cards, investment accounts, everything that would soon be mine. I kept the copies clean, organized, and timed perfectly with every new meeting she claimed to have. Rick, my lawyer, called that afternoon. "You've got enough evidence to move forward," he said. "Are you sure you want to wait?" "Yes," I said. "Let her think she's winning." Because that's what she believed, that I'd forgiven her, that her secrets were safe. She even started leaving her phone on the table again, smiling like she had nothing to hide. One evening, while she was taking a shower, a notification popped up. A message from a name I didn't recognize. "You make Fridays worth waiting for." I stared at it, feeling nothing but quiet satisfaction. I took a picture of the message, then put her phone exactly where she left it. Not a trace of evidence that I'd seen it. When she came out, wrapped in a towel, she smiled. "What are you looking at?" "Just the news," I said. "Crazy world out there." She laughed, kissed my cheek, and walked away, and all I could think about was how predictable she'd become. That night, I wrote in my notebook. Yes, I kept notes, a single line. "She's comfortable again." That's when people make mistakes that I started being sweeter, more attentive, almost romantic. Flowers on the counter, compliments out of nowhere, small surprises that made her believe the marriage was healing. And she loved it. She thought she'd gotten away with it. But behind that smile, every move she made was another brick in the wall she was building around herself. A wall that would collapse the moment I chose to pull the first stone. Because love, like chess, rewards patience. And I was 3 moves away from checkmate.it. Started with small things. She became careless. A forgotten receipt. A perfume that didn't match what she owned. A text that came in while she was in the shower. Tiny, ordinary things that most people would miss. But I noticed everything. That's the advantage of being quiet. You hear more than anyone realizes. That I never accused her. Instead, I studied her patterns the way a chess player studies openings. Every lie she told was a move, and I was already thinking 10 ahead. One night, she came home late again, humming softly, like she was proud of herself. I was sitting in the living room, pretending to scroll through my phone. She froze for half a second when she saw me awake. "Hey," she said, her tone too bright. "Couldn't sleep?" "No." I said, still looking at my screen. Just going over some bills. That word, bills, made her uneasy. She hated anything that sounded financial. I could see her shoulders tense. Bills. Everything okay? I nodded. Yeah, just keeping things organized. She smiled, kissed my forehead, and went straight to bed. That's when I knew I had her attention, not because she was afraid, but because she finally started to realize I wasn't the fool she thought I was. The next few days were strange. She tried harder, more affection, more effort, like she was rewriting the past through kindness. Breakfast in bed, random texts saying she loved me, little surprises that felt rehearsed. It would have fooled anyone else, but not me. Rick, my lawyer, called to check in. She's still breaking the agreement? He asked. Every week, I said. Then what's keeping you from filing? I paused. Timing. The longer she thinks I'm blind, the more evidence piles up. He chuckled. You're a patient man. Not patient, I said. Precise. That weekend, we went to a friend's dinner party. I watched her all night. The way she laughed too loud. The way she avoided looking at me when someone asked how long we'd been married. Her mask was slipping, and she didn't even realize it on the drive home. She was quiet. Then, out of nowhere, she asked, Do you still trust me? The question almost made me laugh. Instead, I said softly, I trust that people show who they are when given enough time. She stared at me, trying to read my tone, but I just smiled and turned on the radio. The next morning, she left early again. This time, I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Her GPS location popped up in the same hotel district as always. Only this time, she stayed longer. I used those hours to finish what I'd started, organizing every document, recording every date, preparing every piece of proof for the day the curtain would fall. When she finally came home, she found me outside fixing the mailbox. I waved casually, pretending not to notice her nervous glance. Long day. Yeah, she said too quickly. Productive, I hope. Very, she muttered, walking past me into the house. Inside, she poured herself a drink. Her hands shook slightly. She knew something was off. That's the thing about guilt. It eats at you quietly, like termites in wood. You don't see the damage until the whole thing collapses. That night, she climbed into bed beside me, careful, cautious. I could feel her heart racing as she turned away. Everything okay? I asked softly. Of course, she whispered, but it wasn't, and we both knew it. The mask was cracking, not with loud confessions or drama, but in silence. And I was ready, because soon, silence would turn into proof, and proof would become powered. There's something poetic about the moment a lie collapses under its own weight. It doesn't explode, it just folds, quietly, like a house of cards. And that's exactly what I was waiting for. It was a Thursday morning when I decided the time had come. She kissed me goodbye, smiled, and said she'd be home late, a client dinner. I told her to have fun, my tone calm, my eyes steady. She didn't notice the small digital recorder in my pocket or the extra folder I slipped into my briefcase. After she left, I called Rick. It's time. I said he didn't ask questions. You have everything? More than enough. I replied that I drove to the same hotel I'd been watching for weeks, parked across the street, and waited. I didn't even need binoculars. She was predictable. Same routine, same car, same person waiting for her at the door. The kind of carelessness that comes from believing you'll never get caught, that I wasn't angry anymore. Watching her walk into that hotel felt almost like closing a chapter. I snapped a few photos, time-stamped, clear, indisputable. Then I drove away. The trap had closed, and she didn't even know she was in it. That afternoon, I stopped by the bank. The financial manager already had everything prepared, just as I'd planned. Our joint accounts were legally tied to the contract, and with proof of breach, I could freeze and transfer the funds. I signed 3 forms, handed over the evidence, and watched as my future, our future, shifted entirely into my named BY evening. I was calm. Too calm. I cooked dinner, poured myself a drink, and waited. When she came home, she looked radiant, too radiant. Guilt has a strange way of dressing itself up in confidence. Hey, she said softly. You okay? Perfect, I replied, setting the table that we ate in silence for a few minutes. Then I said casually, How was your client dinner? She smiled. Long, productive. I nodded, hiding my smirk. Must have been. You smell like hotel soap. The fork in her hand froze. Her eyes widened for just a second. That moment where the brain tries to decide between confessing or lying again. She chose the lie. I told you. We met at the hotel restaurant. Right, I said quietly. I'm sure you did. Then I stood, walked to the counter, and picked up a folder, the same one I'd brought home that morning. I set it gently in front of her. You might want to take a look. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, photos, timestamps, messages, and a copy of the contract she'd signed. She didn't say anything for a full minute, just stared. The color drained from her face. Finally, she whispered, You were watching me? No, I said. I was protecting myself. She slammed the folder shut. You can't do this to me. I'm not doing anything, I said calmly. You did. Her voice broke. You set me up. I nodded slightly. No, I gave you a choice. You made it. She stood up, shaking, trying to find the right words. Excuses, defenses, anything. But there was nothing left to defend. Every detail was there. Every lie pinned to the page that I didn't shout. I didn't insult her. I just said the one thing she wasn't expecting. I forgive you. She blinked, confused. What? I forgive you, I repeated. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or keeping things the same. And then I walked away, leaving her with the folder and the silence. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was angry, but because I finally felt free. In the morning, the first of many legal notifications would reach her inbox. She'd realize, line by line, what that signature had cost her, and I'd be there, calm, prepared, and untouchable, because revenge doesn't need to be loud to be devastating. The morning after that quiet confrontation, the house felt different. The air was heavy, like the calm before a storm that's already decided where it's going to strike. She didn't speak to me when I came downstairs, just sat there at the kitchen table, staring into her coffee as if it could give her answers that I didn't push. I didn't need to. I simply said, You should check your email. A few seconds later, I heard the small, sharp sound of her phone buzzing. She unlocked it. Then I watched her face change, confusion first, then shock. Her eyes darted to me. What is this? Those, I said evenly, are the legal notifications. The contract was activated as of this morning. She scrolled, her hands shaking. You froze the accounts? I didn't, I said. The bank did. Automatically. Her chair scraped against the floor as she stood, voice trembling. You can't just take everything from me. Actually, I replied softly, you gave it away. You just didn't read the fine print. She paced back and forth, her panic rising with every step. I stayed seated, calm, sipping my coffee. That's the thing about truth. Once it lands, you don't have to raise your voice. It speaks for itself. She finally stopped and glared at me. You wanted this. You planned this from the start. No, I said quietly. I planned for honesty. You chose deceit. For a moment, she looked like she might break down, but pride held her together. You're heartless. I met her gaze and said the one thing that ended the argument. No, I'm just done being blind. She stormed out of the kitchen, grabbed her purse, and slammed the door on her way out. I didn't follow. I didn't have to. The law would do what I couldn't, take emotion out of the equation. Within hours, the process began. Rick called to confirm that all documentation had been submitted. The judge will fast-track it, he said. Given the evidence, there's nothing she can contest. I thanked him and leaned back in my chair. For the first time in months, the house was completely silent. Not the kind of silence that hurts, the kind that heals. That evening, she returned. No words, no apologies. Just quiet, shaky movements as she packed her things into a suitcase. I watched her, not with anger, but with a strange sympathy. You don't have to rush, I said gently. She froze, her eyes wet but defiant. You think this makes you better than me? No, I said. It just makes me free. She looked around the house. Our house. And I could see it finally hit her. Every photo, every piece of furniture, every memory. No longer hers. She whispered, almost to herself, You actually did it. I told you I would, I said. I keep my word, even when others don't. She zipped the suitcase, wiped her face, and walked past me without another word. The door clicked shut behind her. No shouting, no final scene. Just the soft sound of an ending. After she left, I walked through the house slowly. Every room looked the same, but it felt new. I wasn't proud, not exactly. What I felt was deeper. A quiet justice that I sat in my office, opened my laptop, and checked the documents one last time. Everything was clean, final, legitimate. She couldn't touch a cent. The law was clear. Rick texted me later that night. It's official. You're in the clear. She signed a release. Congratulations, man. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. It's not victory. It's closure. Then I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, and let the quiet fill the house. For the first time in years, I felt peace, not the fake kind that hides behind smiles, but the real kind that comes when you finally stop fighting for someone who was never fighting for you. And though the war was over, I knew the story wasn't. Because endings aren't just about loss. Sometimes, they're about rebuilding from the ashes. The house felt hollow at first. Her absence echoed through the halls like a whisper that refused to fade. It was strange. I had dreamed of this silence, planned for it. Yet when it finally arrived, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like recovery. The first few mornings were the hardest. I'd wake up expecting to hear the sound of her footsteps, the clink of her coffee mug, the quiet hum of someone pretending everything was fine. But the house stayed still, empty, yet honest. And somehow, that honesty felt like oxygen. I spent those first days clearing the place out. Not just her things, but every trace of the life we'd built on lies. Drawers full of just-in-case notes, old gifts, photos that had long since lost their meaning. I didn't burn them, didn't destroy anything. I boxed them, sealed them, and carried them out to the garage. A small act of letting go. Rick checked in one afternoon. You doing okay? He asked. I laughed softly. Define okay. He smiled through the phone. You won, man. Most people never get that kind of closure. I didn't win, I said. I just stopped losing. After that, I started to rebuild. Not the house, not the money, but myself. I hit the gym again, something I hadn't done in years. I cooked real meals, not just leftovers or takeout. I started running in the mornings, and it was strange how quickly my head began to clear once I wasn't waking up to anxiety. But the world, as always, has its sense of irony. A few weeks later, I ran into one of her old friends at the grocery store. She looked awkward, didn't know what to say, but finally muttered, I heard what happened. She's not doing great. I didn't ask for details. I just nodded. I hope she figures herself out. And I meant it. Revenge wasn't about watching her fall. It was about making sure I'd never be dragged down again. That night, I sat outside on the back porch, a drink in hand, staring at the stars. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt peace. No lies, no games, no second-guessing myself. Just stillness. Then something unexpected happened. I smiled. Not the bitter, forced smile I'd worn during all those months of pretending, but a real one. Because I realized something simple and powerful. I hadn't destroyed her. I'd freed myself. The next day, I took another step forward. I called an old friend, someone I hadn't seen since before the marriage swallowed my time. We grabbed lunch, laughed about old memories, and somewhere in that conversation, I felt human again. Over the following weeks, I started to rebuild my career too. New projects, new clients, new confidence. It was as if the version of me that she'd chipped away at slowly came back to life. But I won't lie. Sometimes I caught myself thinking about her. Not out of love, but out of curiosity. Wondering if she ever realized how easily she'd thrown everything away. One evening, as I closed my laptop after finishing a long day's work, I saw an email notification. Her name. My chest tightened for a second before I opened it. It was short, just a few lines. I know you don't owe me anything, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. I underestimated you. I hope you're happy now. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed a simple reply. I am. Take care. And that was it. No anger. No satisfaction. Just peace. The next morning, I deleted the email. Closed that chapter once and for all, and walked out into a new day. Not as the man who got even, but as the man who finally moved on. Because real revenge isn't about taking back what you lost. It's about becoming someone they can never hurt again. Freedom is a strange thing. It doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps in slowly, moment by moment, like light creeping through a half-open curtain. At first, I didn't even recognize it. The absence of tension, the lack of checking my phone every 5 minutes, the silence that used to suffocate me now felt peaceful. But with freedom came something else, clarity. And with clarity came the final step. It had been almost 2 months since she left when I got the letter from my lawyer. The court date was set, The official conclusion of the contract, the transfer of property, the legal end to a chapter that had already died long before. That morning, I put on a clean shirt, no tie, no dramatics. I drove to the courthouse with my windows down, feeling the cool air on my face. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was closure, the kind that comes after a storm has finally burned itself out. Rick met me on the courthouse steps. "You ready?" He asked that I smiled faintly. I was ready the day she signed that paper. Inside, the hearing was short, efficient. She was there, sitting across the room, avoiding my eyes. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in presence. Like the fire that once made her dangerous had burned out. The judge reviewed the contract, the evidence, and the terms we had both agreed to. "Given the clarity of this agreement," he said, "there's no dispute. All shared assets are hereby transferred to the petitioner." That was it. Just words, delivered calmly, legally. No shouting. No chaos. Just an ending sealed with signatures and a gavel's soft echo. When we walked out of the courtroom, she finally spoke. Her voice was low, trembling. "You really went through with it." I looked at her, the woman I once thought I couldn't live without. "You went through with it first," I said simply. She didn't reply. Maybe there was nothing left to say. She turned and walked away without looking back. And I didn't stop her this time. Outside, Rick clapped me on the shoulder. "Congratulations, man. You're officially free." I nodded. "Yeah, guess I am." But as I walked to my car, I realized something. Freedom isn't about winning. It's about reclaiming yourself piece by piece, until there's nothing left that belongs to someone else. That night, I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for years. Not for celebration, but for peace. I cooked a meal for one, turned on some music, and just sat there. No tension, no pretending, no ghosts. The house was mine now. Legally, emotionally, completely. But it felt less like possession and more like rebirth. I started rearranging things, repainting walls, selling the old furniture, replacing every reminder of her with something that felt mine. A week later, I launched my own business, something I put off for years because she always said it was too risky. Funny how the same thing that once scared me now felt exhilarating. Freedom gives you courage you didn't know you had, and life began to change in ways I didn't expect. People noticed, the confidence, the calm. Old friends started calling again. Opportunities I'd ignored came back around. I wasn't rebuilding the past anymore. I was building something new. Still, one evening, I caught myself standing in the doorway of our old bedroom, now freshly painted and empty. For a moment, memories tried to creep in. The laughter, the lies, the slow unraveling of trust. But this time, I didn't push them away. I acknowledged them, then let them go. Because that's the truth about revenge. If you hold on to it too long, it starts holding you back. But if you use it to clean the slate, to draw your boundaries, to reclaim your worth, then it stops being revenge. It becomes evolution. I turned off the light, closed the door behind me, and walked away, not from her, not from pain, but from the man I used to be. The man who waited, plotted, and watched. The man who was finally done losing. It's strange how quiet peace can be. Not the kind of silence that comes after a fight. That's heavy, uncomfortable. No, this was different. This was the kind of silence that felt earned. Months had passed since that day in court. The papers were signed, the assets transferred, the chapter officially closed. My life no longer revolved around watching, waiting, or wondering. It was mine again, completely. I didn't realize how much space she had taken up until she was gone. Space in my home, in my thoughts, in my sleep. But slowly, that space filled with better things, new habits, new people, new energy. The first real sign that I'd moved on came one morning when I woke up and didn't think about her at all. Not once. It sounds small, but that moment was freedom in its purest form. I started focusing on my business, and it grew faster than I expected. Success tasted different now, cleaner, sharper, unshared. Every deal I closed, every late night I worked, reminded me that I'd built something she never believed I could. And with that success came a new circle. People who knew me for who I was now, not who I used to be. I met someone eventually, but this time, I didn't rush. No illusions, no contracts, no second chances handed out too easily. Trust would have to be earned, slowly, the way I'd earned my peace. Sometimes I still think about the man I was when it all began, the one who smiled through betrayal, who played the long game, who planned every move like a chess match. He wasn't cruel. He was desperate for control in a world that had spun out of it. I don't hate him. I understand him. Because revenge, for all its darkness, taught me something I couldn't have learned any other way. That strength isn't about striking back. It's about knowing when to walk away and never look back. Last week, I saw her by coincidence. Grocery store, middle of the day. She looked tired, older somehow. Our eyes met for just a second, and in that glance, I saw recognition, not of hatred, but of regret. She gave me a faint nod, as if to say you won. But this time, it didn't feel like winning. It just felt done. I smiled politely and kept walking. Because I didn't need to prove anything anymore. That's the beauty of moving on. You stop measuring victories and start living your life. The best revenge isn't taking everything from someone who wronged you. It's building a life so solid they can never shake it again. And that's where I am now, free, focused, finally happy. The scars are there, sure, but they're reminders, not wounds. So tell me, did I do the right thing? Would you have done the same if you were in my place? If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss more real-life tales of justice, karma, and redemption. Drop a like, share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And tell me, what would you have done if you were me?